I'm here with Paul Copan, and we are talking about religious pluralism, which that word shouldn't scare you, but even if it does, Paul's about to explain what it means and why it shouldn't scare you. So what is it, and what should we do with it as Christians?
Well, it's a view that was around during the time of the Apostle Paul as it is today. And it is religious pluralism as it's typically understood. I mean, there's kind of a naive view where people say, well, all religions are basically the same. And of course, if you actually analyze them, they're very different when it comes to the human nature, to the human condition, to the human problem, to the solution to the human problem, to the afterlife, to the nature of reality. Does God exist? Does God not exist? So you will have all kinds of differing beliefs. So the person who says, well, all religions are basically the same, hasn't really done his homework on that question. But there is a more sophisticated view of pluralism. Someone like John Hick, who taught at the University of Birmingham in England, who basically understood pluralism as, for one thing, saying that that religions do say different things about these issues, so that there is genuine conflict when it comes to truth claims. But he says that all religions are basically, in some sense, they're true. That is, that they've been culturally conditioned. That even though they're aiming at the truth, this ultimate reality, but they're false in the sense that they're culturally conditioned because they are, that you can have people who are worshiping Krishna or Jesus or in some places the Buddha, and so they can't all be right on that, and so, but it's just a reflection of their cultural conditioning. But they are trying to move toward this ultimate reality that is, some people call it God or Brahman or something like that. And so, but what John Hick says is that that salvation or liberation takes place when we move away from self-centeredness toward other-centeredness, toward reality-centeredness. And the way that you detect whether salvation or liberation is taking place is that the religion is producing moral fruits in people. So you have Jesus in the Christian tradition, or the Buddha or the Dalai Lama in the Buddhist tradition, or you have Mahatma Gandhi in the Hindu tradition. And so all of these people are exemplars of what it means to be saved or liberated, that these people have moved away from self-awareness or self-consciousness, or sorry, let me back that up, try that again, okay. That these moral exemplars have moved away from a self-centeredness toward an other-centeredness and toward the reality-centeredness. And so we shouldn't think of the Christian faith as being the unique in any way, but rather it's just one of many different paths towards salvation or liberation. And so that's what John Hick talks about. And so there's often that sort of scenario so that's what we mean by religious pluralism.
Yeah, so and one thing, just a red flag there is you don't have to have heard of, maybe you probably have never heard of John Hick, yet you've heard of these ideas. The ideas have consequences, ideas trickle down from the academy, and sometimes you think, what are those guys talking about? And yet you don't know John Hick, most likely, if you're watching this. Some of you have, but or at least heard of him, and yet you've heard of these ideas within the culture. And so really these conversations that happen kind of up here trickle down, and so it's valuable to think them through. And of course, if you're watching this, you're probably thinking, I've met different people with both of those different kind of forms of religious pluralism that they say they hold to. So with the second one, how do we respond to that as faithful Christians?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to remember that the religious pluralist is not taking some sort of a neutral stance. He is taking a stance that it reflects a certain commitment, a certain view about the nature of religion. And for example, the religious pluralists, somebody like John Hick, for example, acknowledge that if Jesus was indeed the second person of the Trinity, coming to earth, dying for the sins of the world, rising from the dead, then pluralism is finished. He recognizes this. And so he can't say, oh, you Christians can continue to worship the way that you do. He's actually saying, no, if you worship the way that you do as traditional Christians, you are misguided, you are deluded. You believe that someone who is dead has come back to life. You believe that that person was the savior of the world. The religious pluralist has to deny that. So really the argument of religious pluralism is that pluralism is more tolerant than the Christian faith, which claims that Jesus is the only way, or pick your religion. I mean,
Yeah.
Islam or Buddhism or something. They claim that there are truths that are connected to these claims, and if you deny them, then you are wrong. You are in error. But the pluralist is doing the exact same thing. He's saying if you disagree with the pluralist, then you are in error.
Yeah.
You are misguided. There is something wrong with your view. So logically, the pluralist is being just as exclusivistic as the Christian. He's got to diminish the significance of Jesus in order for his view to be sustained. And so what we're dealing with then is a religious pluralist who claims that all these religious beliefs are culturally conditioned.
Yeah.
But what about his own view? Isn't his view just as culturally conditioned as the Christians or the Muslims or the Buddhists?
Yeah.
And what is ironic is that the charge of arrogance is often launched at the Christian, but yet the religious pluralist himself is subject to those same kinds of social forces that that make him just if he's right, it's just by accident, rather than because of because this viewpoint is something that is in a sense grounded in reality. Now it's possible that he could be accidentally right, but again he is saying the same sorts of things about Buddhism, that is culturally conditioned, that the Christian is culturally conditioned. But what about the Buddhist? What about the pluralist? Isn't he culturally conditioned? Well, again, there's the objection. Well, if you grew up in Thailand, chances are you'd become a Buddhist. Well, maybe statistically speaking, that's true, but what does that mean? Where do we get to go with that? Because we can say the same thing about the pluralist. We can say if you grow up in a pluralistic society, chances are you'd be a pluralist. And so it doesn't actually advance the cause of pluralism. We still need to give independent reasons for why one view is true over against another. And for the Christian, we can talk about the historical evidence for the bodily resurrection of Jesus, that there are good, strong reasons for affirming why Jesus rose from the dead. And this, if true, would undermine the truth claims of Buddha, Muhammad, Confucius, and so forth, that there is not a uniqueness here that we see in Jesus. I mean, we see in Jesus someone who stands head and shoulders above the rest. He's making claims that no other world religious leader made. Yeah. And by coming back from the dead, those claims are proven or shown to be true. So again, this is, I think, very strong evidence that we need to be exploring. That it's not just, you've got your viewpoint, I've got my point. Religious pluralism, well, that's just, we just affirm one another's religious beliefs. No, ideas do have consequences. Jesus came into the world to save sinners. And if sin is our main problem, a view like Buddhism, a view like Confucianism will not address that fundamental problem. So we need to make some hard calls here and be bold about these sorts of truth claims.
Yeah. And one of the things that Paul's helping us do here is drill, and I appreciate it, drill deeper. It has an initial glance, this seems humble. Initial glance, yeah, we can see that. But if you just drill a little deeper, you see some of the major problems with this view.